Ever since I was a kid, I was curious about the world around me, and that same wonder led me into all kinds of trouble. Mostly good, but of course, as any kid would, some bad. But lucky for me, unlike my curious cat, I didn't die. To be honest, my cat actually didn't die. He's right here. He's totally fine. But just like him, I have a pretty big curiosity about life, and it has led me to do a lot of very crazy and different things than the average Joe. Like, for example, at the age of 9, pretty much knowing almost no English, I went out and raked people's leaves out in the front yard for money. No other kid was doing it in my neighborhood, so I thought I'd give it a try. I was already mowing lawns at this age, but during the fall, there were really no lawns to mow, but there were leaves to rake. And obviously at this time, there's no snow on the ground, so I couldn't shovel snow either. So that's exactly what I went out and did. And even more so, since I was a kid at that time, I could kind of get away with a little bit extra on top of just raking leaves. And if these people didn't have enough leaves on the ground that I thought maybe, they wouldn't be interested in me raking them, or maybe they just raked them recently, I would actually go to the trees and shake off the dying leaves that are gonna fall off anyway, but just to get them more interested in my raking services. And obviously that wasn't the most ethical way of getting more business, but it worked. And as a kid, coming up with these creative ways to make money was a lot of fun for me. Since those days, I've been wildly curious about how our bodies work, overall health, how our brains function, how to build a real business unlike my raking company, and so much more, probably just like you. And because of this extreme hunger and motivation for learning new things, I bought hundreds of books. You can see some in the background here. More specifically, I bought hundreds of self-help books. And honestly, I've probably sunk a few $1,000s into self-help books. Please don't tell my accountant. But that has allowed me to see life in all sorts of different ways and learn from all different walks of life. And I wanted to share some of the most powerful lessons that I learned through reading those books with you today. And there were, of course, hundreds of different lessons throughout these books, but I wanted to get the top 3 that I think anyone in life could use, and what I like to consider some of the most profound lessons for everybody. And rather than giving you these countless lessons and putting them on a bullet list or maybe on Instagram through motivational posts, I thought I'd share the top 3 lessons that I think will impact your life immensely, no matter where you might be in your life's journey. So I wanted to include some of my favorite books from each section. I have 5 right in front of me. The first one is probably a very common one. You've probably seen this one, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Now, the second one, I can't say the name, at least a part of the name, but you understand what it's saying. The Subtle Art of Not Giving Up. The third one is Start With Why. This one is a great read, highly recommend it. The fourth one is Strengths Finder 2.0. There's a first version if you wanna read it, check it out, but the second one is a little bit better, more concise, and there's a little test that you can take online, and it will actually tell you some of your traits, which I thought was really cool. And the fifth and final one is called Emotional Intelligence. I'm actually rereading this one by Daniel Coleman. This is a really good one as well. Lesson number 1, understanding others is the key to understanding yourself. We are all complex creatures with unique backgrounds, different family histories, different environmental factors, but are all seeking to understand oneself. But at the same time, we have a lot of similarities as well. We have behaviors that tend to mimic each other. And what that means is we all have traits that are similar to other people that are around us. And introspection is actually a really hard word to spell. No, but really, it's a really hard word to understand and to actually do. And what I've learned from reading these books is that looking outward is actually a really good way to learn to look inward as well. Not just because it's easier, but also because it's not personal. And I think understanding your environment can be extremely useful in seeing the way that things are and the way that you operate as well. This is the same reason that when we graduate high school or college, many of us get this urge to travel and get out of town. I believe that it's our brains beckoning for an escape out of the mundane, the normal, the day in, day out type of grind that we all experience as humans, especially in our current environment, which is the absolute insanity of our repetitive lives. And when we escape that same repetition is the same moment that we have a chance to take a breath and take a look at the things that were either trapping us or making us feel uncomfortable or maybe causing us pain. insane. That's why people sometimes come back from vacations or long breaks over the holiday weekend and they feel a certain weight lifted off their shoulders, and maybe even have an epiphany during that same trip that they need to either ask for a raise so they can afford a better life, or maybe they need to move to a different job, or maybe they start writing that book because they feel inspired. And that very discomfort, whether it's external or internal, and for me personally, most of the time it's both, but seeing your own infliction on yourself is probably one of the hardest things to come to terms with and actually work on fixing. And to see yourself from a third perspective takes a little bit of crazy or lunacy even. And what I've learned after reading some of these books that talk about enlightenment and philosophy and understanding and happiness and all these things, that at the end of the day, if you want to understand yourself, you must become great at vividly conceptualizing the environment that you are in. What's also really important is to realize who you hang out with, aka who you spend your time with, and how that might be impacting you, but then not obviously putting all that blame on the people, translating that onto yourself and asking yourself, what can I do better? What can I improve on? And it is my belief that those are the keys to unlocking your true transparent self, not just in the world around you, but the world in here. This next section has some really good reads that are dear to my heart. Now, the first one you've probably heard of if you know Jordan Peterson, and that is 12 Rules for Life. It's a really easy read, but it is a little bit lengthy. But it's not as lengthy as this book, which is The 48 Laws of Power. The next one on our list is Willpower. Highly recommend that one. The fourth one is a more recent book called Discipline is Destiny, and I've actually yet to finish this one, but I really like it so far. And the last one, this one I read a few years ago, and I really, really recommend it. I've actually read it twice because it was so good. And this one is called Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. Now, let's talk about lesson number 2, setting boundaries. Now, when I say this on the surface level, you might think, I gotta set boundaries with toxic people. And honestly, you'd be right, but that's only a part of the equation. It's setting boundaries with a lot of things. It's setting boundaries with yourself, with people around you, like your high school friends, college friends, new people that you might meet on the street, employers, family, and maybe even internal thoughts and habits. All of that can be things that we could set boundaries with. And at this point, it might even be things that you're not even thinking about in the current moment. Here's what I mean. In life, things are never black and white. There's a lot of gray in the middle. No such thing as perfect friends and perfect neighbors and perfect relationships, or even perfect actions or perfect employers or perfect family. But I believe that you can get very, very close to that by setting the right boundaries. For example, let's say you have a boss, treats you well, pays you well, takes good care of you, really cares, right? Pretty much everything that you might want in a boss is right there in front of you. But one day he maybe just asks you to work late. Because he does all these nice things for you, you say, okay, yeah, why not? Let me just work a few extra hours. And you do so well that he says, wow. And then he asks more and more and more. Maybe it's unpaid, maybe it's paid. And honestly, you like the boss, so why not do what he asks, right? Plus, if it is paid, it's more money in your own pocket. So that could be a good thing too. But then a few months later of slaving away, you realize you don't have the time to spend the money that you've been working towards. Maybe you really like adventure and travel, or maybe you like to spend quality time with your family and friends, but you just can't because you're too busy working for the money that you ultimately are starting to not even need anymore. And because of this, because you didn't set boundaries with your boss, you are now struggling to say no in other parts of your life. Maybe friends that want to hang out with you that are toxic, and you tell yourself, well, I haven't seen them in a while, maybe they've changed, and you just can't say no. Or maybe you get invited to parties and just feel obligated to go because you'd feel bad if you didn't. And all of these things could have been avoided, but maybe you've programmed your brain to only say yes, all out of guilt and not setting your boundaries. And this is so important, not just in personal life, but in business too. For example, if you don't set price boundaries for your clients, you'll get people that will lowball you or just don't value your time or maybe even your products. If you don't set specific time boundaries, you'll find that people will abuse the time that you give them. And if you don't have personal boundaries for me time, you'll end up taking phone calls or answering texts during those times that will likely distract you from that much deserved rest that your body needs. So remember, set boundaries, hold yourself and others to those boundaries. Otherwise, you'll be left overworked, overscheduled, possibly even broke, but most importantly, likely unhappy. Section 3. These are some of the easier reads, but super, super powerful. The first one is An Essential Guide to Public Speaking. The next one is an absolute favorite of mine, and it's called The Humor Code. The third and really powerful one is called The Power of Habit. Powerful. See what I did there? The fifth one is called influence, and there's a subtitle called The Psychology of Persuasion. You kind of get what it's all about. And the last, but certainly not least, is to be able to spread your message more efficiently on or offline, specifically more online, is called 1 million followers. Hopefully you guys enjoy those, and let me know if you want links to those. I'll put them down in the comment section below. Lesson number 3, spread your voice. I feel like not enough people talk about this, even in the personal development community as a whole, but something that I've noticed is that so many people have such interesting and profound experiences to share with the world. More importantly, lessons that could help a lot of people not make the same mistakes and truly enjoy life. And this could be through the ways of sharing their own experiences, maybe just giving people the freedom to express themselves, some advice on how to conquer the good, bad, and the ugly in life. Maybe it's lessons on how to be more courageous or spiritual or welcoming or kind or thoughtful or confident or loving or tender. And when I say all of us have these experiences that can help others, I'm talking about everyone. We all have our strengths and our weaknesses. And right now on social media, where a lot of us spend most of our time, what you'll find is you'll see the funny, the silly, the goofy videos. But if you start to actually tune yourself to these curiosities and spreading your own voice, it may just lead you to a new way of thinking that you maybe never thought you could think before. And having new thoughts, in most cases, leads to a lot of people having new actions as well. And through this, your algorithms on and offline will start to shift to positivity, courage, kindness, compassion, love, getting better at something, being more empowered, and hopefully all the other things that I mentioned before. From this, you will most likely become a force to be reckoned with. And these habits and ways of thinking are so powerful that when you put them together, it's like putting on the infinity gauntlet of life that will end up literally changing your biological makeup. It will change the way you think, the way you speak, the way you present yourself, the ways that people perceive you, and give you the power to speak your mind freely to others, which is something that I think we kind of lack in this world. And when you speak your mind, you can influence others to do the same. And not in a malevolent way of influencing or manipulating. I mean influencing to enlighten themselves about their dreams, about their passions, about their lives. And this, I believe, is how we can impact the world. This is the same reason why in America, the freedom of speech is a constitutional right. And politics aside, this is one of the reasons why we evolved from cavemen and savages to the humans that we are today. And sadly, we might be going back to that because everything is automated in this world. Why learn to cook when there's DoorDash and Grubhub and Uber Eats? Why learn to read when you can watch Netflix and Hulu? Why learn to speak wondrous thoughts when the speaking is done by others? The only way to break through what humanity is experiencing right now is that through language and understanding. The only way to grow is by speaking your truths and being open to other people's truths as well. This is how we have grown, not just on a personal level, but universally. And I want to leave you with this. We all have the power to change the world if we change ourselves first.